I know it's all there, but the complexity of the workflow to make it work for me in a production sense always seems like I'm swimming up water like a salmon to try to get everything in place and working. Unlike my early career, where if you saw it and it was good, when you got into post, it was good. And I understand this has the potential to be better in post, but I'm wondering how many people are just not taking advantage of this stuff because it's too dang complex. And that's kind of what I was hearing from you, Patrick, is like, okay, you can just shoot it this way, which is like what you used to shoot. But then does that push you away from learning how to shoot the better?
No, I don't think so at all. I think you shoot. Here's the thing. I don't think that shooting RAW has to be complex. It has to be complex when you're shooting ProRes RAW because they don't have a way to capture in camera right now. But Red RAW, I mean, frankly, you have the flexibility to change things, as much as you want once you actually get into the edit. But when you're on set and you're shooting, you pick the look that you want to go for. If you want to create a custom LUT ahead of time, you can. You don't have to. You can shoot with the standard color science that's built into the camera. On the feature film that we just worked on, we somehow got a hold of Light Iron's color science and plopped it into the camera and shot with that throughout the entire film and added the LUT in Final Cut, and it looked great.
So I guess the question, because everybody who's watching this is probably thinking, well, that would be great to do, but maybe I can or maybe I can't shoot with Red cameras. Is that different or the same to the workflow pathways that Canon or Blackmagic or Sony or Ikegami, if they're still around, or anybody else can do? I mean, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what should I invest in and what pathway, and it sounds to me like this is a complex, fully featured and robust pathway. But how does it compare to all the other pathways?
Let's see. ProRes RAW is more complex to get going because of the need for an Atomos recorder. And you have the ability to change the actual linear to log and then log to Rec 709 or Rec 2020. PQ, HLG, whatever. Like, you have different ways to choose all of that crap. And so it's way more complex. Blackmagic RAW, I still stand by that it's not truly RAW, but from a workflow perspective, you have a lot of the benefits of RAW. So I think Blackmagic RAW is one of those things. Again, you kind of choose the look in camera that you want to start with. If you decide that you want to change it later, you can. You get into post and you're like, oh, shoot, you know what? This is a third of a stop too dark. Here, let me change the ISO. You've got that capability. The bigger thing with Blackmagic RAW is if you've got the Pocket Cinema 6K, you can actually shoot the 6K because they don't.
Has anybody seen one of those in the wild?
Brad?
No, I've ordered one.
You still haven't got it yet.
I don't know. I don't know. It was probably a good thing, but I waited a few days, so I don't know when I'm actually going to get it. Maybe by NAB next year.
Okay. Right, exactly.
But I've seen in the early reviews on B&H, there's a couple of them that people have got that have been scratched and dinged up and had issues. Not all of them, but a few early ones were shipped like that. So I'm like, I'm kind of glad I waited a few days to order, because hopefully by the time they ship mine, they won't be shipping. I don't even know what was happening there, if it was just an accident in the warehouse or if somebody had been using it for months and decided to put it back in the package and resell it. It sounds really weird that they would even think of doing that.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I mean, early test stuff I have seen on YouTube, there are people a few people have gotten a hold of them, and it's super sharp, and it's a super, there's a guy who I was watching a video yesterday. He was comparing an Alexa Mini, a Red Raven, a Pocket 6K, and an Ursa Mini Pro, and he did a blind test. It wasn't super scientific, but he just did a blind test shooting some models and a chart, and then he asked people to rate A, B, or C, or D camera, what's their favorite, and the Blackmagic, and maybe it could just be the bias of the audience watching that were interested in Blackmagic cameras, but The Ursa Mini Pro was the number 1 on his test. The 6K was the number 2. The Alexa Mini was number 3, and the Red Raven was number 4. So it was an interesting, and I think he said thousands of people replied to that. So it was an interesting blind test. It's compressed on YouTube, and
yeah, I was going to say,
you're not. Who knows? Who knows what that actually means in practice? But it's still fascinating to see that by the time it goes to YouTube, and I had a hard time picking apart the cameras anyway from the tests he did. At least it kind of doesn't matter. You can spend $2,500 on the camera, $25,000 on the camera, $50,000 a camera. You're going to get different levels of port. Maybe an Alexa Mini is going to be more robust in the field. But the fact is, if you know what you're doing with the camera, you can get pretty close to the same look across the board if you're smart on how you handle all the nerdy stuff Patrick's talking about. Linear to log conversions and log 3G10 and what's some other stuff we can throw out there to confuse people?
Log 3G12, red wide GIMP.
Yeah, when did log 3? What's the difference between log 3G10 and log 3G12, and why would I want 12? And when did 12 come out? I've barely learned about
more.
10.
It's a bigger number.
Tell me, Patrick,
important.
What is log 3G12? I just saw that and said, what is this?
Log 3G12, I believe, is 12-bit as opposed to 10-bit color, I think. And there's something slightly different with the curve, but the one that is officially part of IPP2's pipeline is log 3G10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, back to your original quandary about the state of things. I mean, I feel like the general concept of the raw workflow is in itself not that complicated. You know, are you going to shoot raw, or are you going to encapsulate it in some other format? And I guess I liken it a little bit to still photography. Of you have a still image, and are you shooting JPEGs? Are you shooting whatever version of your camera's raw is. The big difference there is that a still camera on the viewfinder doesn't show you the raw image. It displays a version of a JPEG curve to kind of give you an approximation of what you will probably have to work with, even though you've got all the raw information. So conceptually, shooting raw is a good idea because obviously you want all the information, and most still photographers are also Photoshop users or Affinity Photo or Pixelmator or whatever you use to edit your images, and they have a clear understanding of what the raw data is and what it brings to the image. Not a lot of DPs are colorists. And not a lot of DPs are editors who are really handling the post-production of the image after it's captured. And the complexities of raw for the moving images are way higher than for still images. So it's a little bit of camera operators, DPs, anyone who owns a camera is exposed to this tool set, which is really powerful and very complex. And there's the common knowledge that you should be using it. But it's putting a lot of firepower in somebody's hands. And I think as a general rule, flip it on, shoot raw. But all of once you start getting into the intricacies of IPP2 and log curves or linear curves or whatever. That's
curves.
Linear to log curves, yeah. Much less once you get into the HDR realm of HLG and PQ and everything else. I mean, that's not a casual domain. You don't just stumble into that and flip it on. So
makes sense.
I think you got to. If you find the raw workflow that you're comfortable with, and then unless you're going to go down that road and really understand this whole color science world, stick with what you know, and do it, or bring on people who are going to really understand those tools.
Yeah, the reason, I guess the attack that I was going for when I want to bring off the whole subject was that for those of us who shot stills and went through the conversion from standard JPEG to raw JPEG, we just put our cameras on shoot both. And then I can use the JPEG or I can use raw. Right. That was, almost everybody who came into that did that for. Right, but video data rates, particularly as we push up these resolutions into 4K and maybe 6K now and then 8K, keeping two streams on your storage is going to really propose a financial penalty that most people can't do. So the question was, at what point, like we had to migrate in still photography to understanding two forms of encoding and all the ramifications on our workflow in the back end at that case, when will that start to take place more robustly on the video camera side? It seems like we're a year into ProRes RAW Plus, and I'm still not seeing a lot of people shooting either ProRes RAW for an actual RAW workflow or Blackmagic RAW for a RAW workflow or any other kind of RAW workflow. I'm just not seeing it a lot out there. And I'm wondering what it's going to take.
I've seen a little bit of Blackmagic RAW. I was going to say one thing. IPP2 actually I consider to be simpler than Red's previous color science. Was that fair, Patrick?
Oh, I just feel they intentionally made it simpler. Yeah, 100%.
So when I get footage from an Alexa, it's shot in that I forget log C, right? Yep. And ProRes, and all I have to do is apply a preview LUT, and it looks pretty. And that was one of the appeals of it. Hey, look, I get most of the sensors data and information in a easy edit codec, ProRes, and I just apply this LUT, and it looks normal on my screen. With Log3, with IPP2, you just kind of set it to IPP2, and it takes care of some stuff for you, and you essentially get a red file that looks very similar to a Log C ProRes file, and then you just apply one of the red LUTs to it, and you're done for as far as editing. I mean, you could get more creative than that, but for me, I just kept it really simple and straightforward. So I actually think in that case, they took a little bit of the complexity out because before I'm like, should I be on this red gamma? Should I be on this red color? Should I be on this? And now they're like, hey, this is what we've kind of proven to be the best, at least for right now.
Right.
Stay tuned for the future.
Which is useful for everybody in the Red ecosystem, not for anybody else in the Blackmagic ecosystem, the Canon ecosystem, and all the rest of the cameras who don't have that. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Canon already, the Canon Raw Lite especially, already comes into Final Cut and auto applies the proper LUT. So you're already normalized. I think some of the confusion is that there needs to be complexity with RAW. I don't think that there needs to be complexity. There's not with the Canon RAW. Sony RAW, it's complex because they purposefully don't want a whole lot of stuff playing back Sony RAW. And Arri RAW is an image sequence. You can play it back, but it's
that's a little pictures, big pictures, not little.
The other thing is, we're even us now, we're conflating RAW, which is a file container, and log, which is a gamma curve. These are two separate things. You can shoot a log profile onto a recorder capturing ProRes, and you've got log ProRes, and then you've got what some people might perceive as raw data in terms of the color curve for grading and post-production, or popping a light on or whatever. But it's a ProRes file, not a RAW file. Right. So you've simplified some elements of the workflow because you've got a ProRes file, but you still have a log curve for grading.
Right.
So that's just another kind of split in the complexity of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, but I think overall, Jeff, to your point, log and RAW aren't the same. The purpose of shooting RAW as opposed to shooting video is that you're actually getting sensor data that can then be reinterpreted later. And that's not something that has to necessarily be handled by us. The point is, Brad and I shot some stuff back in 2017 after IBC with James Tonkin and VGTV and a number of people there in Amsterdam proper. And that was using RED's previous debayering algorithms. And then not long after, RED changed the way, I mean, they basically created IPP2 as a color pipeline, but they also came along with different ways of handling detail. So the way that they determined edges based off of sensor data changed. The math that they were using changed. The way that they handled out of gamut colors and highlights changed. And because of all of that, all we had to do was update our Apple plugin, our Apple workflow plugin from RED, and all of a sudden, all of that footage took advantage of all of that new technology that RED had developed. So, right now you think about movies from 40 years ago that were shot on 35 mil film, they're getting 4K HDR remasters.
Well. Are you there, Bill? I'm going to try just one more time, see if I can get this back up and running. Let me see here a second. Calling.
And I would think Richard's back.
Now I got Jeffrey back. It was a Skype. I quit Skype and it came back again. So
go figure.
So, but it's amazing. Is it? Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out why I didn't have Jeffrey in there, and there we go. So let me see. Are we still on live? I'm amazed that when I do something like that the stream keeps going.
Yeah, the stream's independent now.
It is live. It still is live. So.
So anyway, my point in the whole thing was I just think this is incredibly important, and this really helps people who are watching this who maybe don't shoot at the highest levels of the production industry. It helps you to hear these terms, to get to understand this, and you get more facility with the technology that's coming toward you because you listen to these types of things. But in the long run, I'm just want to make sure that the particularly the young folks and the people who are just starting out don't get too in the weeds with this stuff, because most of what you shoot, at least for the first half of your career, generally won't be gone back to and pulled out like a Hollywood film and remastered at higher resolution. I hate to say it, but even corporate guys like me, I mean, I remember in the middle of my career that one of my largest clients, who had like 1,000 locations around the country, changed the colors of their uniforms in their retail stores. And so everything from that point back in history became unusable unless you're doing a retrospective. So at some point, trying to future-proof every single thing goes through your camera, I think, is a fool's mission. You've got to figure out.
So, but Bill, I still think you're saying that it's complex or difficult or costly. I mean, RAW is compressed. Oftentimes, you're shooting at the same data rate as you would if you were shooting ProRes.
I'm actually not saying that, Patrick. I've shot 4 things now in RAW already, and I believe in all the things you're talking about, and I know where it's going, and I'm trying to learn it and figure it out just like everybody else in the market is. I just think that there is a disconnect between what this technology allows us to do and what we need to do.
Okay, so I'm going to play, because you were talking about doing things at the highest level, and I want to play a little bit of, I don't know. I want to bring that up.
Go ahead, please.
Well, the thing is I'm in a small film market, right? I'm in Utah, and we're just doing small independent films, and I'm having to deal with this stuff. And I'm thinking about the modern content creator and somebody who's maybe doing their own YouTube channel. You're talking about whether something might live on. There's lots of reasons why somebody who's doing vlogs or reviews or whatever type of YouTube content that they're doing may want to pull up old footage, repurpose it. I think that moving forward, there's more of those kinds of people than there are in corporate video and broadcast and in high-end Hollywood, and all of them can actually benefit from a 4K Blackmagic camera or, you know, whatever,
yes,
ProRes RAW or whatever.
Sure, but how many of iJustine's or Jonathan Morrison's 2-year-old YouTube clips that got tons of views, how many of them are coming back again? How many will they need to go back and repurpose?
I'm going to side with Bill on this. I think that you know, we definitely want the highest quality we can get as easily as we can get it. But the only thing that matters is speed. That's all anyone cares about is time. And
Amen.
The idea that you're going to come back and circle back to something, nobody's coming back for anything. And for the YouTube market, you literally can't go back. You once your YouTube file is uploaded, you can't replace that file like you can on Vimeo. Once it's published, it's done.
Right, but
you can go back and say, I want to do flashbacks to episode 36, and then have a better color science for episode 36 flashbacks. And sure, by all means, do that. But if enabling that is going to slow you down on the day by 10 minutes, then it's not worth it.
Well, and
thank you, Brendan. That's a better
argument.
Articulation of the point I was trying to make. That's a much better articulation of it.
Yes, and I would agree with that 5 years ago, because when Red was bogging my computer down and I wasn't able to deliver it out, I was like, why aren't we shooting 1080p ProRes on an Alexa or something else in log? Right. And I was making those arguments in 2014 that this is a waste of time for these projects. But the problem is now we're shooting 5K at a like an 8-to-1 compression ratio, and we're shooting ProRes proxies in the Red camera. And guess what? Computer speed sped up, the interface sped up, the GPU takes advantage of debayering, and it's not slowing me down. And I think that's the point. It's not actually complicated. It's actually not slowing me down. It used to back in 2014.
I don't mean in post. I mean on the day. If you're
how does it slow you down on the day though? If you're just flipping it, you set up the camera once and you leave it. The only thing you're changing, like Patrick says, is white balance and exposure.
Right. No, if you have your workflow proven and you're using that, that's kind of what I meant earlier when I was like, if you know your workflow for shooting raw, then set it and forget it and let the color scientists sort out, the post work.
And the opportunity cost for you guys who are doing this, I mean, you've already baked that into, or theoretically, you baked that into the model, right? You've taken the time intellectually to understand the workflows. You have access to the cameras that enable these workflows. You have access to editing systems that enable you to work efficiently and fluidly with this footage that is generally harder to process. Not always, but you need bigger computers and faster drives and everything else to run these bigger raster things, even if they're compressed beautifully. So at what point does chasing all that stuff flip the value curve from just taking all that time and doing what some of these YouTube stars now, and we mentioned two of them before, they didn't start with all this stuff. They started with maybe a Canon Vixia and good content, and that leveraged their career much farther and much faster because they were telegenic than working your butt off to try to get all this stuff right. I'm not suggesting at all that people shouldn't work their butts off to try to get this stuff right. This is core technological importance for the future of video. And if you want to be a video professional going forward, the more of this the better off you are 100% of the time. But I just don't want to see too many people get off onto this side stream and get stuck in an eddy when, in point of fact, the way to drive your career is the content, not the technology behind the content. You got to balance them both. You can't do one without the other, but it's too easy to get lost in this stuff sometimes. That's all.
So how about if you decide certain projects need the higher quality or certain projects need RAW, but not all of them, right? But when I first got my GH4 and GH5, I started shooting 4K 10-bit all the time. Since then, now I've dropped down to 8-bit because I can't even play 10-bit files in Mac OS natively. So now I'll decide if I want something that I need 10-bit on, and I'll shoot it 10-bit specifically, but I don't do that across the board anymore.
I think that's totally valid. There's an actual real-world case study involving LumaForge and Jeff and Patrick. When we did the Faster Together stage, my buddy Alan and I were in charge of shooting interviews, and then we turned those around immediately. Right. And we shot in 1080 ProRes on a 4K pocket camera that could shoot 4K RAW. We decided to do that because in that event situation, it was important to just have no processing hiccups.
Right.
And to be able to play straight off the timeline. We were playing videos straight off the timeline, no rendering, no exporting. So obviously there's a time and place, and in that case it worked really well. And I have to
doable, but some projects don't deserve that much time. I hate to say deserve, but let's be honest.
And adding production friction. Yeah, when I was shooting that stuff out there with the Canon RAW rig and had to have the Atomos recorder on top of the camera in order to, 12G HDI out into it, the rig was a pain in the butt to work with. And God, do I wish I could have shot that on my phone instead, so I would have had a more fun afternoon at the fair watching the jugglers perform than dragging a tripod and a big camera rig to every shot to set it up to execute the shot.
I would agree with you. Yeah, that doesn't sound worth it.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I mean, it was worth it in terms of I needed to understand the technology. I needed to work with it. I needed to process RAW through the thing to see what am I going to get shooting it this way versus what I would have gotten shooting it another way. But, we're on the verge of another set of iPhones, and they're talking about a third camera and the rest of that. And I have to say that sometimes I look at iPhone footage that people send me, and I'm going, it's not that far from the stuff that takes me a day to prep for, and I have to go out and shoot with complex rigs. And at what point is the delta not worth it?
And then they said that Apple's coming out with a Pro iPhone. That's what I was talking about. Some kind of a camera, a new camera in the fall.
Better shoot ProRes RAW. That's all I'm saying.
Well, internally.
So listen, ProRes Apple.
All of a sudden, you have to go out to an Atomos recorder from your iPhone.
That would
be no work.
USB-C connector on there, it'll work, man.
Of all the
you get a better screen on the Atomos recorder.
Of all the things that Apple is concerned about, where does ProRes RAW fit in everything else? With the cameras, with Final Cut Pro, with Logic, with compressor, with motion. ProRes is already completely entrenched and established everywhere. ProRes RAW is a tiny little fraction for whatever the reason is. It might have to do with the Apple and Red going at it in the patent office. I don't know. But how important is ProRes RAW to Apple in the whole scheme of their video production, all across their hardware and all across their apps? Patrick, what do you think?
My sense about the thing is that, look, Apple always, here I'm going to bring out the old hoary skate to where the puck is going to be idea. But I think everybody in the industry clearly understands that the ability to capture some sort of direct sensor data, to Patrick's point, is going to be the way of the future. There's no reason to do that when computers get so fast, phones get so fast. All the processors can handle that natively and easily. So I think they have to be doing research. I think they have to be setting standards. ProRes RAW was there out of the gate implementation, and I think everybody liked it. But that whole thing with them working with Atomos and kind of locking it in for at least the first year. It's been a little longer than that before it goes out. And now you are in the patent situation where I think Red is saying a little bit, no, this is ours. And Apple's saying, it shouldn't be yours. It should be everybody's. And those of us who are consumers all want everything to work everywhere, right? We would like it if you had one tape cartridge back in the old tape days and you put it in any camera and it functions. That was the ideal. It didn't work that way, but we all wanted that to happen. So right. I think this is the modern equivalent of that. Everybody wants one card format, one brilliant does everything codec, one process that everything streams through almost instantaneously, but you're just not going to get that. So who gets to make the compromises and who gets to win and who gets to hold the patent? Big questions right now.
Well, back to my question, how important is ProRes RAW to Apple in the grand scheme of all their video production? On a scale 1 to 10, ProRes RAW has to be in the bottom.
It's got to be like a 3, maybe.
Yeah, at the most.
Well,
because everything else is more.
I don't know if
ProRes RAW? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, do it. Then I don't know if I agree with 3, but you go, Brad.
Here's my thought. Apple is throwing their weight behind. They're spending $6 billion on new content. Billion. We thought it was 1. And that figure went up 6 times. And they are also advertising the Mac Pro as a ProRes RAW workhorse machine. I think from a certain side of it, and Apple's a big company, they have a lot of things going on, but the iPhone is essentially finally we're at the era that I've been wanting to see. As soon as Mac blog sites were taken over by the iPhone, I'm like, I cannot wait for this iPhone nonsense to go away and we can get back to more interesting technology. It was really cool and it's a world-changing thing, but now that we're 10 years plus with the iPhone. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think for certain people at Apple, ProRes RAW is a 10. For Tim Cook, he's like, whatever, just get us great content, however you want to do it. We don't care.
Yeah, I'm more in your camp, Brad. I think that ProRes RAW, while not will not be hitting any headlines at Apple anytime soon. I would position it more as an 8 or a 9. I mean, not that it's going to get a lot of marketing play right now, but when you look at the state of post-production, well, even production, but formats and post-production workflows, ProRes is almost not ProRes RAW, just your standard flavors of ProRes is almost the one ring to rule them all. Like that is the one family of codecs that everyone goes back to, that everyone trusts, even Windows folks. And you can make an argument that the various flavors of the Avid DNX codecs are kind of in the game as well. But everything else is just it's not trusted as much, not used as much, and certainly does not have the name recognition. I think even non-post people understand that, well, ProRes is what we want to get to. So ProRes RAW is the next step in this, and there's been a lot of conversation about, does Apple care about the pro market with their recent history, and even pointing to the Final Cut 10 as a sort of demonstration of, well, whatever point is trying to be made, but insinuating that they don't. I feel like laying the groundwork for ProRes RAW is what keeps the myriad diversified platforms, capture devices, NLEs. This is one of the few areas where they all get woven together. So I think it could turn out to be critically important. I don't think there's going to be a lot of fuss made over it. I view it as the background render of the game plan there. It's going to continue to function in the background, and it's going to get out there, and then all of a sudden we're going to realize this is the thing that has kept everything together and taken us to a new level.
I could see a future where that's the case, but I think that there's still a lot that would have to change, not within Apple. I think that there's a lot of change that would have to happen within the industry to be able to get that kind of adoption, right?
For sure.
If to a point that you guys have been talking about, like if this new iPhone Pro shoots ProRes RAW, I think that would be a huge step in the right direction for the format. The question is that what Apple's up to with this? They're not suing Red. I think
they're disputing the patent.
They're disputing it's a patent inquiry, I think is what it's technically called, right? In any case,
they're challenging the patent.
So it'll be interesting to see if they end up recording ProRes RAW within iPhones. I think that would be one way in which the adoption goes up. In which case, maybe Tim Cook, it's maybe not a 3 for Tim Cook. Maybe it is closer to a 10. And I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But the other thing that I think is still going to keep at least a lot of people in our part of the industry from widely adopting it is the fact that it still doesn't have any sort of metadata controls, which are things that for whatever reason have stuck in people's mind as being like the thing that's necessary for RAW. Per our discussion, the real benefits are archivability and the ability to alter photo sites into a different kind of video. But I don't think that explanation is going to make anyone any more excited to work with it, right? So I think we need adoption in additional editing software. I think we need internal recording because, dear God, Bill doesn't need to suffer another day with that giant recorder on top of that camera trying to go about a fair. Like,
God bless you.
Bill needs to be able to go out with a DSLR and record ProRes RAW internally and not have to think about it before it gets the kind of adoption and acceptance that ProRes has.
So
I have another actually little argument about why I think it's a 10, and that is that Apple has shown a predilection for not just investing in stuff, but investing in people. And I think the fact that they have done ProRes RAW and then they're watching as it migrates out into the industry, I've got to believe that behind the scenes at Apple in the engineering labs, there are a lot of people who understand this hugely deeply. And I don't think they would have invested in those people did they not think that those were careers that would leverage into bottom line results. So I do think it's a 10.
Well, and speaking of people, I think Steve Bays was the one who told me this, but the inventor of JPEG is the guy who came up with ProRes and ProRes RAW. So, I mean, one of the people on the team. I'm sure there's a lot of people working on it. So it's like, yeah, there's some smart people who understand the future. I think it's a long game thing. You'll read sensational articles and comments saying dead on arrival. ProRes RAW is dead on arrival. And
clickbait.
And here's the thing, like patents run out, and there's a long game here. And when I remember when ProRes came out in 2007, was it that we went from the Apple Intermediate codec to ProRes. And I thought, why do I need this? I've got DVC Pro HD, I've got XD Cam, I don't need ProRes. And by 2011, or it was like 2010, I think, when it was announced, but by about 2011 is when we started seeing Alexas shooting ProRes, and it just completely took over the broadcast dramatic world. And of course, feature films were still shooting ARRI RAW, but they would shoot ProRes on board. And we just saw this overnight. It became a ubiquitous thing. It feels like it was overnight, but it was years. It was years of, and we're only just over a year into it. So for people to say dead on arrival is very premature, especially considering that ProRes RAW has a lot more to do to become a camera acquisition format. And there'll still be Red RAW and there'll still be Blackmagic RAW. And I don't know how many, how widely adopted Sony RAW or even Canon RAW Lite will become, but there'll always be these other formats. But it would be amazing to see ProRes RAW become as ubiquitous as ProRes is the thing everybody wants to capture, and it's a long game. I guess that's the long and short of it. Long game.
Seems to me the thing Apple gets most right, more than most other companies, is that they understand that driving friction out of the interface between human beings and technology is what wins in the long run, right? The iPhone didn't win because anything else. It was a frictionless adoption for most people. I touch, I swipe, those things became instantly recognizable, instantly learnable, and in ProRes, that we're not there. I mean, the whole first half of our conversation about this was how complicated it is for somebody to go out and shoot and then do post on these formats. It is complex. It's needlessly complex. If Apple cracks that, and if part of this patent dispute is to make sure that there are pathways of development that they can proceed that allows them to remove this friction from the workflow, and they don't get slapped with constant, okay, but then pay us for this. Because, everybody knows Apple doesn't like that. Apple wants to own their own technology and control its destiny. They don't want to license as much as they want to invent. So if this all works in that way and they can remove friction from some sort of raw workflow environment, framework that makes it simple, then I think they can win that big war coming. It's going to come anyway.
You think it's a big war?
Yeah, I think, yes. Global distribution of video content, both creation, post-processing, and distribution, that whole thing, think of how much easier it is for us to do this right now. Why? Because this global network of bit delivery is there. And it was not there 5 years ago.
ProRes RAW is part of that?
I do, because I don't think you can capture, edit, distribute through these small devices like phones with increasing capability if you don't have those encoding possibilities that are robust, that are there, and that somebody, theoretically Apple, has made frictionless to use. I think that I keep thinking more and more these days about friction. I mean, Jeffrey made the point earlier. I mean, that's what draws people to a thing. It's powerful, but it's easy. I can do this. Yeah. And I don't have to go to school. I don't have to go to film school to edit video anymore. I can learn it on my own and satisfy my need to communicate in a whole bunch of ways using that wins. That's my personal feeling.
So let's change the subject. I think we've been on RAW and ProRes RAW we still haven't solved anything. No. But there's a couple of interesting things on the Final Cut Pro Creators Summit website that happened. That they're redoing the website. Number one is there's a limited space of 150 people for the Creative Summit. They put that on their website. They've never done that before. Okay, that's number one. Number two is they've added, since yesterday, exclusive visit from the FCPX Pro Video team. Visit. So I'm not sure if that's confirmation that they're going to come see us at the Juniper again, but it sure seems like it.
Oh, you're talking about like the last time. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so the team is going to visit.
I think the most interesting part is the team has always hung around before, but
this is Brad. This is exclusive visit. I don't think it means they're going to bring us coffee or anything, but I think that
they better.
You remember the first years when you were having a drink in the bar or something like that, and just chatting with 2 or 3 people, and you went, "So I'm Bill. Who are you?" And it turns out,
sure,
it's the guy in charge of a thing that I've had questions about at Apple forever, and you didn't even know who he was, and then you get to say, "Oh, hi, I have this question."
Yeah, hello. Yep.
And, and it's gotten more formal right up to last year when the team sat down in kind of a semi-NDA kind of circumstance and answered questions, or at least chatted.
Had an open conversation. Wow. But going to the spaceship this year, that's cool.
Very cool.
Right, we're supposed to actually be there.
Yes.
Like not across the street at the visitor center that anybody can go in, but
I think we'll get a cup of coffee in that in the cafeteria with the giant glass panels.
So can we
I
go
think
to
cameras? I think cameras are going to be watching me specifically, and they're going to be tracking my iPhone.
You're going to enter that spaceship campus, and Apple's going to say no videotaping unless it's an iPhone.
Well, we'll hold up our iPhones, and those won't work actually in certain areas.
Better.
I've had my this is my GH. No, this is my not GH. This is my Apple iPhone 6s Plus that I've had for years, and there's no reason for me to update it because it shoots 4K, and I'm very satisfied with it.
Headphone jack.
Headphone jack, yes.
That's why you haven't upgraded.
I haven't upgraded. I don't care about that because I can get one of those lightning jacks. But the thing is that it shot 4K. It's the first one that I bought, and I really like it, and that's what I've been shooting in. But they'll get me to upgrade if they significantly upgrade the camera capabilities in the new one, because that's what I upgrade an iPhone for, is for the camera.
I heard, might be apocryphal, but I heard probably 4 years ago that they had a team of something. The word was 600 engineers working just on or 600 people working just on the camera section of the iPhone.
Yeah.
Now it's probably not engineers. That's probably the whole
software staff. And whatever integration.
That's a lot of human resources. And when you consider how much money the phones contribute to Apple's bottom line, that's a pretty sensible investment.
No, it absolutely is. I have no need to buy one unless there's a significant increase in quality or whatever else they're going to do. I don't need 6K, for God's sake.
But why not? You can punch into the eyebrows.
No, obviously, if a GH6 came out with 6K, that's fine, but I don't need it on my phone. I mean, the thing about ProRes RAW on the iPhone, but there's got to be a sensor that can output RAW in order to have ProRes RAW, right, Patrick?
Well, it would be less about the sensor and more about the processing capabilities of the phone. But yes, essentially.
That's what I've read in the past, yeah.
So the reason why we think about that with ProRes RAW right now is because the Atomos cameras have to be able to get a RAW signal over SDI or HDMI from the camera manufacturer. So it's less about the sensor and more about what the manufacturer is able to output over that port. So the sensor should be able to support RAW because it's not about the sensor. It's really about everything post the sensor.
You got enough photo sites.
You're just bypassing the image image processing that makes an HEVC or H.264 on the phone.
Okay.
And going to a different image processing, which is
weird thing on the site. Did we mention about the fact that they're not doing the 3 separate rooms this time?
No.
Is that true?
It says on the site. That's sample sessions. Limited space, right under your limited space bullet point, it says a single program. Everything is happening in the same place with no overlapping content.
Wow.
They must have gotten feedback that people were really bummed because there were 2 or more sessions that they wanted to go see all of them.
I thought that's why they were recording them.
Right. I thought so too.
Yeah, that makes
interesting.
Sense.
Huh. You're right. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct, Patrick. I completely missed that.
Correct. You're absolutely correct.
Correct and right at the same time.
I missed that. So that means we don't have to choose between Patrick Southern and Jeffrey Orthwine.
No, God, thank God.
Although the choice is easy. I mean,
Jeffrey's
I won't tell you which, but we all know the choice is easy.
I'm not sure what that means, Brad.
Choosing between Jeff and Patrick.
Well, it'll be easy because I'm going to be sitting there listening to Patrick.
Well, but I'll also be sitting there listening to Jeffrey when it's his time. I mean, I see what you're saying, Brad. There's no choice to be made.
Yeah. Anyway,
we're in a single program.
No, I think he was making a little dig at you, Patrick.
I didn't say anything.
Well, you're making a dig at somebody.
I've still got that video from London.
Oh yeah. That's a good. You should put that up somewhere.
That's a good catch.
That means every session's going to be potentially as much as 150 people. That changes the dynamic significantly. I mean, the presentation is done, like question and answer time. That's different in a room of 100 versus a room of 25.
Amen.
So So that should be an interesting.
You probably want to tighten up your presentation too, and give more time.
Tighten it up. I've hardly even got an idea, and you're telling me to tighten it up. All right,
man. Go throw away a third of your content right now.
You really got to tighten up this presentation. It's
I don't know, but when you get that point,
you lost the back half of the room already.
As the only old radio guy here, let me remind you that a 30-second spot is about 85 words. A 60-second spot is about 160. Right to those standards. If you got 10 minutes.
What's 10,000 words?
Yeah.
Well, the math works from there. So 160 times however many minutes is how many words you get for how many minutes you got.
So when I teach classes at Future Media Concepts or anywhere else, a lot of times they're 3 days and they're 8 hours a day. You're standing in front of a class. I rehearse the heck out of that stuff. I rehearse it and I rehearse it and I make bullet points and I look at my iPad or whatever the list is so I can go to a bullet point and then look at the class and talk to them and go to a bullet point, look at the class. But it takes me like months to prepare for a class like that. I don't know, for an hour, it's got to be preparation, right? You guys rehearse and stuff?
I used to go around and do lectures for Video Maker magazine on these tours. We'd go all over the country, and it takes, I think, probably the best part of 2 weeks to prepare for a 1 hour. That's how I used to figure. It takes about 2 weeks to prepare for a 1 hour in front of people discussion.
Yeah, and that's why
That's
why I don't do anything at the summit, because I don't want to work. I want to enjoy myself.
It is a lot of work.
It is. It's work for me. That's the way I do it. I rehearse it. So if I go to the summit and have to do a presentation, it's work. I don't want to go to the summit and work. I want to relax, enjoy myself, watch you guys work.
I feel well rewarded by Armadillo Willies. So,
R.I.P. Armadillo Willies.
I did find another burger place up there. I found another burger place a couple blocks away. It had really good burgers and fries. Yes.
Somebody should check out and see if there's a park nearby and whether we could get Grubhub to deliver barbecue and just have a picnic. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Hey.
As long as there's no smoke. Are they having fires again already? They're having fires.
Oh, God.
Just have Tony Gallardo bring out a grill and.
Oh, there you go.
That's true.
There we go.
Smoke.
Some of those people, you've seen those guys with the big Ram trucks that carry a barbecue rig behind them, right?
Yeah.
Let me drive one of those out there.
They're very popular out this way.
Jeff, you going to bartend the event?
That's a great idea.
There you go. That's a good class.
I mean, if you can make a bar available, yeah, I'll put together some custom cocktails. Although I'd probably need Tony's help for that too, because he can make a cocktail.
Yeah, he can.
But that'd be pretty good. Maybe that's like the the Thursday or Friday night event is just Final Cut cocktails.
So since you brought that point up,
Raw is like the ultimate cocktail because it's not a premixed drink.
Everything comes back to Raw. So. If they're going to
do Moscow Mules, you got to get 7,000 brass mugs for them.
If they're going
to
only 150. Oh,
150. That's right. 150 copper mugs. How expensive could that be? Get them branded.
So if they're going to have a single program, why are they videotaping?
Because some of us maybe want to watch them later, but want to chat in the hallway. I don't know.
But that's not the original. Somehow those two things
they don't release it, do they?
No, they stream it for 90 days afterwards. You can stream it for. No, it's not for the public. It's only for attendees. Yeah. Only for attendees of the summit.
Oh, really?
It's the first year they're doing it.
Stream stuff?
Absolutely, it's only for attendees. It's not for the general public.
I understand.
But I'm just. But I.
No chance that these kind of attendees will be able to capture and repost.
Yeah. Well, come on. You paid for it, so you have less incentive to share it for free, right?
I'm just joking. We're all fine people. IP is important.
But I think that I think that there is some value, even if you were there. For some people, even jotting notes or whatever, they may want to go back. I missed that point.
Okay.
Sure.
I
think there's some value to it. Obviously, if there were 3 sessions going on at once, it makes it a lot less stressful to try to choose one like Jeff liked to do in the past.
Right.
But since they're not doing that, then I think that there's still value in being able to go back review, or maybe you did just, I don't know, go to a bad burger place and you're throwing up in your hotel room.
Listen, however
something.
FMC wants to run it, they're footing the bill to put this together. They have the relationships at Apple that allows them to get us these access things. However they feel they need to to monetize this thing, God bless you guys. Keep going.
No, I agree with that. However, in their website redesign, I pay attention to these things.
It looks just like the App Store. If you notice the way the App Store and the newer Apple kind of marketing stuff with that's something I immediately noticed with the website. I don't know if you guys pull up like a story on the App Store about an app or developer page or whatever, and put that. I did this. Put that side by side by the Creative Summit redesign. There's like no coincidence there that somebody at Apple said, "Hey, you got to match this style."
What I was going to point out was,
whatever the newest HTML cascading style sheet mojo that allows this, and this is what a modern website can look like if you got people who know what they're doing.
Yeah, it looks a lot like stuff on the App Store with the artwork and.
Right. My point was going to be that for the last 2 years, there's been a little footnote at the bottom of the website that says in cooperation with Apple. That's gone right now. Now, I'm not saying that they're not. I mean, obviously they are, because they're not going to visit the spaceship campus and go knocking on Tim Cook's door, which is what I want to do, without some cooperation with Apple. So, but I'm not saying it's not. But before it was publicly on the website. Now
Richard,
it's not there.
Have you wondered why people were running into walls at the spaceship? It actually wasn't because of they were running into glass. There's actual force fields that keep you in the area you're supposed to be. And that's why people were running into walls at the spaceship.
Well, of all the things, I always make this joke, of all the things for Tim Cook to be worried about, does he even know what Final Cut Pro is? Has it ever come across his horizon?
I emailed him about it, and he wrote back one word. So, yes, I'm sure he is aware of Final Cut Pro.
What was his one-word response?
So I told him that I was able to get my movie up on iTunes, and it was because of, I don't know, it was a I love Apple email, and he wrote back, congratulations.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've gotten back in the day, I got response from Steve Jobs' office twice, including 2 phone calls, not from Steve himself, but from his office 2 separate times. I was out mowing the grass one time,
and there was that. And they showed up at your house. They rated everything.
Well, I can't talk about that.
Right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise me if Steve's admins were all PhDs.
Exactly. Something like that.
I think I hear a helicopter overhead. If I cut out, guys.
See if it's got the Apple logo.
It should be fun.
Yeah. So, Bill, are you coming this year? Because I missed you last year.
Every fiber of my being wants to be there. I'm just stuck in the same kind of circumstance. I have to figure out the schedule. We've got 2 new clients, and they're very, very active right now. My biggest hope is that they go quiet at the end of the year. That used to be wonderful because I had a lot of retail clients, and so from Halloween on, no retail client wants you to cross their threshold and talk to them because they're busy selling for the third quarter or for the fourth quarter numbers. But I have mostly business-to-business clients now, so you never know. And a percentage of those often do kind of state of the organization meetings right at the front of the year.
Right.
So that's what's got me worried, because you're often delivering tons of content that has to be vetted and approved, and it's happening toward the last quarter, getting up to the first of the year presentations. That's what killed me last year. So I'm hoping. My fingers are crossed. I'm going to book everything as soon as I think that that landscape is as settled as it can be, and then hope that I don't get snapped by not being able to go. I mean, I've got a thing. I'm supposed to be going to something on Thursday night, and that same client, one of those larger clients of mine, came in and bought out my whole Thursday all the way up till 8 o'clock in the evening. So I've got go to the event tickets that I'm going to just throw away.
Well, we'll have the other Bill Davis there. So
yeah, you'll have the better Bill Davis, so that's good. And I'm hoping that I could maybe make some phone calls and say, "This is Bill Davis calling." People answer my calls immediately, going, "Oh, yeah. Bill Davis from Apple."
No, no. Bill,
I didn't say that.
Just go to the where they hand out the tags and snag his.
Oh, what's this? Oh, I'm sorry.
And Brad, what about you? You heading up to the summit?
Yeah, I mean, I got to. It's too much fun.
Yeah.
So previous years I've had something to show or do or whatever. This year, I think I'll just be there.
Okay. And the good thing for me is this year was the first year I can get a direct flight to San Jose, nonstop.
Yeah.
I had to go to SFO all the other 3 years and then take this 45-minute, 50-minute shuttle. Now I can get to San Jose. There's one flight in and out nonstop each day. So, and the Southwest too, which I prefer.
We need to get Phil Hodges to re-sing "So You Know the Way to San Jose."
Do we?
Yeah,
you did a fine job.
Clearly, you don't want me to sing it, but anyway,
it's too late.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. I think we've caused enough interruptions on the internet today. Skype was misbehaving. Internet was misbehaving. Xfinity, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Anything else? Well, the main thing is we all want to wish Patrick the very best. That's what this whole thing was. I was absolutely
congratulations, Patrick.
Yes, we're so glad. We're so happy for you that I'm not. I've been, as I told Sam, I had Sam on one of these a couple weeks ago, and the whole reason I was involved with LumaForge at all was Sam initially, and then Patrick secondarily. Now, Sam is still with LumaForge. That's one thing people are getting confused. Sam has not left LumaForge. He's still the owner, part owner. He is just, what is the quote I got from him? It says, from a business perspective, I am still very much a part of LumaForge, but from a day-to-day management perspective, I am not. That's his exact quote. So he has not left LumaForge.
He's just cashing the checks. That's it.
He's stepping out of the way and doing Final Cut Pro stuff.
The biggest change for us is that if you have any support questions having anything to do with Frame.io, now everybody watching this, now you can call Patrick directly, ask for him, and make sure that you stretch your question out like a 15 or 20-minute question. He loves those. He absolutely loves those.
15, 20-minute questions about your support tickets.
Yes.
Just reach out to me.
I've just been direct messaging Emery, so
there you go.
Because he has nothing.
That's why Patrick's there now, so you can stop calling Emery and call Patrick instead.
The real reason Emery wanted me there was so that Brad would stop talking to him as often.
Exactly.
Well, the good thing about Frame.io, I really enjoyed their presence at NAB last
Sam
year.
Hired you. Sorry, that's the same reason Sam hired you at LumaForge.
Yeah, that's why you and I were roommates during IBC, and not you and Sam.
Yep. Not because his girlfriend was there, but
well, if you had a choice to spend a week with Aubrey or a week with either of you two guys, I know what I'd pick. She's smarter.
Absolutely. So, Patrick,
I would choose to spend time with myself. Anyway,
Patrick, so this is a big change for you. How long have you been with LumaForge up to this point?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
So I know it's sometimes a bit disruptive to make a big change like that. I've made multiple big changes in my life from careers. And it's always, even though you're happy, it's always a little bit, uncertainty and stuff. And
yeah, there's definitely that. There was a lot of goodbyes yesterday, and it was hard because I've worked with these people for a long time. Even before I worked at LumaForge, I've known a number of them. And
sure.
And now you're not allowed to talk to him at all.
Right. Well, yeah, never allowed to speak to them again. The thing that's funny is that I literally still live a mile away from the LumaForge office. So theoretically, I could have lunch or coffee with any of them at any point in time.
You need to pull a George Costanza and just do your Frame.io work in the LumaForge office.
Speaking of George Costanza,
you were talking about office space. They've got that upstairs, that whole other building.
So speaking of George Costanza, this is the yo-yo that Jason Alexander uses in the movie Faith-Based. Screen used that nobody has seen yet because the movie's still not out. But anyway.
Spoilers.
Is this our first eBay pitch?
No, I'm still using the yo-yo. I like playing
So
with
Patrick, does Frame.io have an office space where you live?
Not yet.
Okay.
I mean, unless you consider my living room part of the Frame.io office space.
That's what I was wondering.
Hey, you should write that off on taxes. Just saying.
Can you do
the
that
square
when
footage?
You're not a sole proprietor?
Well, make an LLC.
Yeah.
And then
you can do, I guess, a percentage of your rent.
Right. There's a whole formula on all the tax preparation things. How much of your home is exclusively for office? How much?
Bill's been audited, so he knows.
Now, my question is because
but I don't even want to talk about that.
Because I am an employee of Frame.io, and I'll be working on their behalf out of my apartment. Does that factor in? I don't
know.
You talk to somebody who actually knows this stuff, because getting advice from us on taxes is like getting advice from an ice cream vendor about video production. Not to say that ice cream vendor doesn't know anything about it, because
I was going to say our FedEx guy at LumaForge kept coming in talking about the videos he was editing over the weekend. So
exactly, speed of the landscape now.
Anyway, well, guys, it's been great hanging out this morning.
I sure appreciate you stopping by, Patrick. I really do.
This has been fun.
Yeah. All right.
And you won't be going away. We'll keep roping you into stuff. You may have to officially moderate what you can say based on your employment, but we're expecting to see your smiling face and beard.
Yes. My smiling beard. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really Sam and I had a conversation yesterday, maybe. Anyway, he was talking about, this is essentially just a jersey change. We're still all in the same league.
Good. There you go.
And I think that's true. I'll still be hanging out with all of you, talking with you, hopefully, working with you guys here and there. And it's just a matter of instead of being a mile that way, I'll be here.
There you go. Very good.
Paint the wall behind you, and we wish you well.
Oh, well, I'll probably actually get a space so that I don't paint a wall and upset my landlord. Anyway.
There you go.
You guys have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Thanks, Jeffrey, Brad, Bill, Patrick. Thank you very much.
Thanks.